This is CBC Vancouver News.
Calls for improved workplace safety.
It is really about identifying the hazards and risks.
It comes after one person was killed yesterday at a Vancouver construction site. Plus, it's BC Budget Day.
A flipping tax can help take a little bit of air out of the tires in terms of speculation, but it's not really getting at the root of the housing crisis.
The province reveals its spending priorities. We'll break down the key takeaways from today's announcement. And police say 4 men have been hospitalized with serious injuries after an overnight shooting in a residential neighborhood in White Rock. Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thanks for joining us. A bustling worksite that employs nearly 2,000 people and is set to transform the Oak Ridge area was shuttered today after one person was killed yesterday. As Joel Ballard reports, those in the industry hope it will serve as a wake-up call for more safety rules at construction sites.
It's a quiet day at the Oak Ridge Centre construction site. Operations have been closed after a load fell from a crane Wednesday, hitting the building on its way down and killing one person below.
I mean, it can happen to anyone. Obviously, you want to go home to your loved ones.
It's unclear exactly what happened, and the identity of the victim is still unknown. A sad day for those in the industry and the community.
I'm always afraid of that crane in the corner because the other day was really a lot of wind and I don't feel sometimes safe.
This construction site will be turned into a mix of condo towers, community facilities, and green space. A West Bank project with construction by Ellis Dawn. It declined an interview, but in a statement said, "We are deeply saddened by this tragic event and will do absolutely everything possible to understand why it happened." Occupational health experts say construction sites are inherently risky, and while there have been safety improvements, there's still more to do.
We know how to work safety. We know how to mitigate these risks. And so it's really about implementing the systems and ensuring that that happens on a daily basis so that workers are safe in every circumstances on a construction job site.
But for those in the industry, there's frustration for the death and a string of recent crane incidents at construction sites around BC.
Our push over the last 20 years for improved safety in and around tower cranes hasn't been heeded, and it needs to be heeded.
The union has been vocal about the need for stricter certification and training requirements for crane operators. In Victoria, the Minister of Labour offered his condolences and said his ministry is focused on enhancing worksite safety.
We are engaging with industry, with the workers, their representatives, to look at ways, how do we improve safety around tower cranes in this province.
Those improvements, the union says, need to happen quickly.
I'm certainly concerned that if we don't see the regulations change and improve and written to the level we need them, that we will continue to have these types of incidents on a increasing frequency.
WorkSafe BC is now investigating how the crane dropped its load. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
The 2024 provincial budget was presented earlier today, and while the government is projecting a record-high $7.9 billion deficit next fiscal year, the Minister of Finance emphasized the need to maintain spending.
Some look at the challenges ahead and say government should respond with deep cuts, leaving people to fend for themselves. This would only weaken the services we all rely on and drive up costs with added fees and fares. It would leave people at risk to those who take unfair advantage by putting profits ahead of people.
With an election scheduled for this October, this year's budget touched on many hard-hitting topics, including housing, healthcare, and climate action. Our Justin McElroy broke down the 5 key takeaways.
The 2024 BC provincial budget is out. Here are 5 things you need to know about it. Number one, record high projected deficit by the provincial government, $7.9 billion for this upcoming fiscal year, up from a $5.9 billion deficit for the current one we're in. The province spending the approach saying in a time of high inflation and global uncertainty, they need to continue maintaining spending on programs that British Columbians rely on. Number two, a property flipping tax is going to be introduced in the province. If you sell a home within 2 years of purchasing it, you will now be subject to up to a 20% tax on all profits made from flipping that home. Number three, in vitro fertilization. It's free in some provinces right now for one cycle. That's not the case in British Columbia. Until now, province saying that they will be creating a program for that in the next year will save some families that use that method $20,000 to $30,000 if they try to go that route. Number four, there's a whole bunch of different tax credits being expanded in this year's budget. That includes a 25% increase to the Family Benefit Fund, a 10% increase to the Climate Action Rebate, and about $100 worth of rebates to the average BC hydro bill over the course of the year. And that leads to number five, the lack of new programs in this year's budget compared to past ones. Instead, the province underlying how much British Columbians have saved from the different programs and tax credits they've put in place over the last 7 years that they've been in power. With an election coming up in October, they're focusing more on the overall impact of what they've done in the past 7 years as government rather than anything specific in this year's budget, or more to the point, that isn't in it.
Our Mira Baines was also at the legislature earlier today. She joins us now with more on the reaction to the 2024 budget. Mira, lots of new spending. What has the reaction been from the official opposition?
This is really where the BC NDP government and the official opposition, BC United, massively differ. BC United leader Kevin Falcon, who used to be a finance minister, says he really takes issue with the way taxpayers' dollars are being spent.
We're getting the worst outcomes we've ever seen in healthcare, in public safety, in drug overdose death rates, in housing affordability, in every area that the provincial government's responsible for. We're seeing the worst results we've ever seen.
And there was other criticism as well. We spoke with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives about the new flipping tax. Now, the way this tax is going to work is that within the first year of buying a home, you will be taxed 20% on the profit of a sale if you decide to sell it, and then that slides down to zero by year 2. Now, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says that doesn't do anything for housing supply and generating housing supply. Take a listen.
Ultimately, I think it's a bit of a distraction. We do have a government here that's doing more in terms of housing policy than any other province in the country, but it's still not enough. We're not seeing non-market housing investment at the scale we need. We're seeing, big legislation in terms of zoning reform, which is moving in the right direction, absolutely, but that also needs to go more and it needs to happen faster.
Now, one spending announcement getting a lot of reaction is the decision to offer a free round of IVF starting next year. What are you hearing when it comes to reaction to that, Mira?
Well, there are a lot of tears over this one. The BC government will be covering one cycle of IVF, and that includes treatment and medication. Now, these are very costly expenses, ranging from $15,000 to $20,000. The province will be catching up with at least 7 other provinces who have something like this in place. This goes into effect in April of 2025.
It's extremely costly. People are looking for all sorts of options. And as the population, the trends change, affordability, they're waiting longer as well. So we're seeing individuals choosing to become parents later. And so I think that this is another great opportunity for people to have options.
Details still have to be worked out, but Finance Minister Katrina Conroy did say that no one should be denied the opportunity to have a child based on how much money they make, who they love, and whether or not they have a partner.
Thank you, Mira. That's Mira Baines reporting from Victoria. White Rock RCMP is investigating an overnight shooting that seriously injured 4 men. Police say shortly after midnight, multiple rounds were fired in a residential area near Roper Avenue and Lee Street. A suspect vehicle fled the scene, and shortly after, a vehicle fire was reported in Surrey. The injured men were taken to nearby hospitals. Mounties say it appears to be targeted and there is no ongoing risk to public safety. Anyone with information or video of the incident is asked to contact police. The federal government is investing $4.2 million to prevent gun crime and gang violence in Vancouver. The money is earmarked for community-led projects for youth already involved in gangs or at risk of joining them. Minister of Emergency Preparedness Harjit Sajjan says the aim is to address the social conditions that lead to the criminal behavior.
Know that these type of investments like this one can prevent the tragedies quite literally, and it can save many lives. And we're putting not just a Band-Aid on these type of problems, we're taking active measures to address the root causes of gun and gang violence.
The investment comes from the Building Safer Communities Fund, which has supported similar initiatives in Burnaby, Richmond, and Surrey. A woman is in critical condition and a man is in hospital after a double stabbing in Surrey last night. RCMP say they were called to Guildford Town Centre Mall shortly after 6 o'clock. When police arrived, they found a man and a woman with stab wounds who were then taken to hospital. Officers say there was a confrontation between the two victims and another man. It's unknown if they are known to each other. Anyone with information or dash cam footage is asked to call police or Crime Stoppers. The federal government says the 23 remaining offshore oil and gas permits off BC's coast have been surrendered to Canada.
With these final permits, Natural Resources Canada has now officially secured the surrender of all 227 permits in the Pacific offshore.
Chevron Canada voluntarily relinquished the permits for the 5,900 square kilometre area a few weeks ago. There has been a federal moratorium on oil and gas exploration off the Pacific coast since 1972, but permits issued before that date were still valid. The David Suzuki Foundation is calling the surrender of these leases a win for the climate. Last year's wildfire season in Alberta was devastating. This year, with leftover fires still smoldering, it's getting an early start. As CBC's Julia Wong reports, the provincial government is working to get ready, and so are communities.
Last year, when wildfire threatened Drayton Valley, Lane Naprava jumped into action, helping to build fire guards.
Well, it's all our community too, right? And it's hard to sit back and watch as everything's burning around you.
Now, he's one of dozens of people ready to volunteer in case the province becomes overwhelmed again. Among them, truck drivers and heavy equipment operators.
When there's a fire in the community, I want to help. The province doesn't have the resources as well. And consequently, everybody needs to pitch in on these things.
We're going to give you an overview of the incident command system.
That means learning emergency workflows and staying safe in the field, so it's seamless under pressure if or when the time comes.
We can't always wish problems away and hope that someone's going to come in to save us. The best solutions come from the ground floor.
A record 2.2 million hectares burned in Alberta last year. Wildfire season, which normally begins March 1st, started several days early. There are 55 active wildfires. Facing warm and dry conditions, Alberta could be in for another grim season.
Well, I think we're going to be more prepared than we were last year for sure.
Alberta's forestry minister says this season, the province will continue using nighttime firefighting helicopters, bring in ATV and fire bans sooner, and try and add 100 more firefighters to the front lines. It will also rely on volunteers, again.
No jurisdiction has the number of firefighters available, trained, ready to go, and employed on an annual basis to fight the worst fire year.
So we're going to give you some of that information today.
Back in Breton, there's a shared goal for those here.
I just want to keep communities safe, honestly.
More of these information sessions will be held in the coming weeks in a province where wildfire season is already underway. Julia Wong, CBC News, Breton, Alberta.
Still ahead, we'll speak with one of the first Black students to enter a previously all-white school in the U.S. to talk about her experiences and the resistance she faced as one of the Little Rock Nine. Stay with us. Thank you for joining our commercial-free live stream. A Red Deer resident now holds a pretty impressive title. She's the world record holder for the most blood donated by a woman. As David Mercer shows us, she's 80 years old, has been donating for nearly 6 decades, and has no plans of slowing down anytime soon.
I always have so much energy each time after I donate. Like I can be washing my walls, do my spring cleaning all the time, every time after I donate. Yes, I have so much energy. So I just kept going every time I could. Well, it was Catherine that got that going, my eldest daughter. She was at my place when I had just donated my 200th pint. And she said, gee, Mom, I think that must be a record. I said, well, I know it is for Red Deer, an area, maybe all of Alberta. She says, no, I bet you it's a world record. So that's how that started. First time was I was 22. I'll be 81 next month.
Josephine has been basically the kickoff for a campaign that we just started with a number of different municipalities in the area called Penhold Cares. Basically, we've got a small, friendly competition between Penhold and a number of the smaller communities around Red Deer to see who can get the most blood donors in, and I think that's great.
They do need blood all the time. They're always asking for more donations. There's so many people waiting for surgeries and they haven't got the blood, so I just donate all I can. It doesn't take long at all. And if you eat liver, broccoli, or spinach, or Swiss chard, things that are rich in iron for 2 or 3 days before you donate, your blood will always be good. And it only takes, oh heck, with me, it takes about no more than 10 minutes. In the past, I had 5 pints given to me. I had 2 miscarriages. In the first one, I had 2 pints given to me. And then 2 or 3 years after that, I had another miscarriage and I had 3 pints given to me. So I thought, well, I'm going to keep donating because you don't know when that's going to happen. And I was so thankful that I had those 5 pints to save my life.
The commitment that Josephine has got, not only for Canadian Blood Services, but for her fellow Canadians to support the blood system is great. I wish more people were like Josephine. That community spirit, that giving spirit that she's got, I hope that she inspires other people to do the exact same thing.
I'll give you a big hug. All right, take care. I hope I'm saving several lives. I'm doing all I can. I just hope more people will do it.
Thank you. You're very small. In 1957, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that racial segregation of public schools was unconstitutional. But the first Black students to actually enter previously all-white schools were often not supported by the American public. When 9 African-American students signed up to attend Little Rock Central High School in Arkansas, they were met by a hateful mob and were even turned away by state guardsmen. Minnie Jean Brown-Trickey is one of the Little Rock Nine. She joins us now. She's lived in BC and Ontario for much of your adult life, and you're here to talk to us a little bit more about that. I want to call it a legacy because what you've left for myself, I know, has been very profound. It's really a lesson that is still important to teach people today. So let's just start off with, you were such an important part of social change as a young person. Did you recognize that at the time?
I didn't recognize it when I signed up, and it's really important to say that the day that I signed up, first of all, even though I lived in the segregated South, I actually believed that racism was grown-ups and the kids weren't like that. And so when I signed up, I assumed that the 2,000 white kids would be thoughtful, curious, just the same as I happen to be. So, I mean, part of it is the moment that I knew that it was important was the behavior of the mob, the fact that media from all over the world were there. And suddenly I'm thinking, this isn't even about me, which is a good place to be, and then feel that responsibility, because otherwise the point of the violence and the hatred was to scare us away.
Now, Minnie Jean, that time was so different than now, but what you've taught people, or is it so different than now? Maybe that's the question.
Well,
why is it still important to talk about that right now?
Well, for me, because I spend quite a lot of time with young people, even to the second grade, is really I teach nonviolence. I talk about nonviolence as a way of life, and we were 14 and 15, so our society sort of says people who are leaders are older. But we were these kids, and I think young people really respond to that. And I'm glad they do, because then I get to hang out with them, and we have really great conversations.
Do you think these are still issues that young people are facing today?
Absolutely. I'm not sure if I could function in the current context, because there's so many things coming at young people now that, I'm kind of
emotional. Yeah.
I'm glad that it was only this horrible situation in Little Rock that was coming at us, because it gave us, things are really confusing, so you kind of don't know which way to move, which thing is the thing you should be interested in, which thing you should do something about. And that was very clear. We had to keep going to that school because they didn't want us there, and we were going to go no matter what. So if I can convey to young people that something you're interested in is really important, and that's art, music, drama, dance, learning, all those things. To
stand up for what you believe in.
And to have a sense of personal regard for yourself. So that's the kind of thing I use those Little Rock Night kids to do that.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message and example, and you're very brave for still continuing this pursuit of advocating in this way. So thank you so much for joining us here today in person.
Thank
Minnie
you.
Jean Brown-Trickey is an educator and social justice advocate. Thank you, Minnie Jean. Here we have a live shot of Vancouver City Hall. We'll have your full forecast next.
Canada's figure skating team in Beijing played by the rules. But even after a doping scandal, they were beat out by Russia.
Why have I done this my whole life cleanly and correctly, the right way?
The enhanced games are real.
Now a new company's trying to change the game.
We want athletes who have the potential to break world records and give them the opportunity to push the limits of humanity.
I am the fastest man in the world.
Self-described as the Olympics of the future, the enhanced games would allow athletes under clinical supervision to take substances currently banned.
I don't think that athletes want to be the fastest natural man in the world. They just want to be the fastest.
Backed by big money, including PayPal founder Peter Thiel, it's also promising substantial compensation. But would any athlete actually participate?
As far as my athletic peak, history says that it's behind me.
The enhanced games say it's not. Let's find out.
32-year-old Australian swimmer and Olympic silver medalist James Magnuson is the biggest name to express interest.
I'm going to do this with the best doctors and medical professionals in the world to make sure that I'm doing it safely and properly.
But most in the sporting world have ridiculed the idea.
I think it's a horrific message.
Including the head of Canada's anti-doping agency.
There may be challenges or possibilities for improvement to the anti-doping regime. The answer to that is not to throw it away and suggest people compete using drugs.
We've cut through the water with unmatched speed.
Others call the idea preposterous, although it's hoped the potential competition forces the IOC to give athletes a greater financial stake in the Olympics.
I really hope that what we are starting to think about is how we reward our Olympic athletes.
The enhanced games will feature events like swimming and track and promises an inaugural games in 2025. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Hey, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 12th, join CBC Vancouver's Michelle Elliott at the YWCA City Shifts free event, Reimagining Our Cities, Advancing Equity in a Polarized Time. For more information, visit ywcavan.org. And CBC Vancouver is the exclusive media partner of West Coast Leaf's annual fundraiser, the Equality Breakfast, March 8th. Tickets at westcoastleaf.org.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Doris Madavi joins us now with a look at our weather. Doris, I hear it's good news in the horizon.
That is right. We get some snow pretty much across BC, including here on the local mountains this weekend. So some very good news, not just for anybody who's looking forward to doing some winter activities, but really just anybody who might be concerned about the snowpack levels, the drought, the fire season. We've been hearing a lot about the impacts that we're facing come the spring, so any snow is really welcome news. Now, there is a snowfall warning in place for inland parts of the north coast around Stewart, because there we might see perhaps more snow than we would like in a short period of time, but we'll take what we can get. A small air advisory warning because of dust pollution there, and then also some of the highways, whereas this snowfall warning is for tonight into tomorrow. These ones aren't until Sunday and Monday, which is why they're really just advisories at this point, and we're going to be watching that situation as it develops. Now, the reason the snow is making it so far south is because even though we are above average, above seasonal across the province, that's going to change over the next few days as this cold front starts to make its way further south. And in fact, here in Vancouver, we may just hit the negatives one more time by Sunday night into Monday, as we might reach around -1. So frigid for Vancouver, at least. If we take a look at our accumulation map, you can see plenty of snow coming over the next 72 hours, pretty much across the province here in Vancouver and across the south coast. It's mostly going to be falling as rain, except for at those higher elevations. But again, freezing levels are coming down, so should be some snow on the mountains. Now, even though through the weekend, it's really just going to be on those mountains that we see the snow. Early next week, Monday and Tuesday, there is a small chance that we see some of those flurries make their way further at lower elevations, and even possibly here in Vancouver. We could get a mix of rain and snow. Now, It's very uncertain at the moment, no, so keep that take that with a grain of salt. Now, tomorrow, much more calm across the south. Maybe a small drizzle in Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow, but I wouldn't count on seeing much at all. That much more activity up in the north. And here in Vancouver, we might see some snow on the local mountains Saturday night and Sunday once again, but might be some rain before that. So be prepared for a little bit rougher conditions on Saturday, but by Sunday, we should see some better conditions on the ski hills and prepare for a foggy morning tomorrow. And then the fun really starts this weekend.
Thank you so much, Darius.
Thank you.
That is your late news for this Thursday. Thank you so much for watching tonight. For news anytime, visit our website, cbc.ca/bc. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a great night.